Right, so we're still on this side, 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 and side, angle, side proof practice because we're going to just have all of our proofs in one place for these two theorems that we can reference later. So now I want to drop down to the side, angle, side proofs, and we're going to do number 4 and number 5. So go ahead and continue on the sheet where you already started, and we're just going to make sure we number everything. It doesn't have to be in order. So you're going to put number 4, and statements and reasons. So again, like I said, because on these I have headings, you actually know what theorem you're shooting for, which makes it a little bit easier because you know what steps you might be taking. So let's go over to 4 here, and what they tell us is that we have we want to prove JMN is congruent to LNM. And they give us a couple pieces of information for our given statements. So we know that JM, and I'm going to mark it, JM is congruent to NL. And they also tell us the angle. They tell us JMN right here is congruent to LNM right there. All right, so now I want to be thinking through a little bit here, even before I start. If I know this is going to be side, angle, side, if the angle needs to be included, that means the other side I would need for this triangle would be that side. And when I look over here, I have this side and an angle. For that angle to be included, it looks like, again, I'm going to need just that side to be congruent. So I can kind of already see the trajectory of where I'm headed here. I want side, angle, side, and side, angle, side. All right, but let's go ahead and go through and write our given statement. So we are going to have, for 1, that JM is congruent to NL, and that is given. 2, we have angle JMN is congruent to angle LNM, and that is given. So now, like I said, we've already kind of talked through this. If I knew that these two sides were congruent, then that would be really helpful. And I do know that those are congruent because they're the same thing. So I'm going to say here that MN is congruent to MN. And the property that I'm going to use, go back to your reference sheet from Unit 2, is going to be the reflexive property. This property is used a lot in proofs. Okay, and now that I know that, I have a side, angle, side, and a side, angle, side. Now I want to look at my proof and look at the order of my letters in my triangle to make sure that I have the right things congruent to each other. So here JM should be congruent to LN. It looks like I'm good there. And then MN should be congruent to NM, and that works too, right? Because they're both congruent. And my angle M should be congruent to my angle N. And so it looks great. I've got everything in order. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my last step, which is going to be triangle JMN is congruent to triangle LNM. And for this one, I'm using side, angle, side. Next, we're going to do number 5. So on your paper, you're going to put number 5, and we're going to write statements and reasons. And then we're going to look at our given statements, and we're going to mark up our triangle and see where we might be headed with this. So I have AB is congruent to BC. So I'm going to mark those. And then they tell me that BD bisects ABC. So I can't really mark anything at this point. I know that it bisects it, but in the proof I need to take a little step further. But I'm having a feeling that I'm going to be able to say that these two are congruent because this bisects, right? So now let's look and see what triangle congruency do I have. I want ABD is congruent to CBD. So that's looking good because these two angles are the ones that need to be congruent, and they look like they're right in the same spot on my triangle. All right, so let's go ahead and start writing out our proof. I want to get my given statement, so I have AB is congruent to BC, and that is given. And then I'm going to say next that BD bisects angle ABC. Okay, and that's given as well. Now, the given statements are usually very strong clues as to what theorems or postulates or definitions we're going to use. The given statements really kind of lead us through. They give you a jumping off point at least. So if I know that this BD is a bisector of angle ABC, then if I again think back to my angle proofs, I can say that angle ABD is congruent to angle CBD. So that would make these two congruent. And so I'm going to go ahead and write that. I've got angle ABD is congruent to angle CBD. And that is going to be by the definition of angle bisector. That's why we can say that those two angles are congruent. So again, I know I'm doing side angle side proof. So I've got a side, I've got sides, I've got angles that are congruent. What's left? Well, it looks like that side needs to be it, BD, because I need the angle included. So side angle side and side angle side. And we're back to our good old friend, the reflexive property. So here I'm going to say that BD is congruent to BD, and that's going to be the reflexive property. Okay, but I'm not done yet. I need to prove that these two triangles are congruent. Like I walked through before, it looks good. AB is congruent to CB. All of our letters are in the correct order. Angle B and angle B, they're in the center. So that's good. So I'm going to put my last step, which is what I'm proving, which is triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CBD. And the reason I can say that is by side angle side. So what we did in class is I worked through those proofs with everyone, and then we got into stations, and the students tried to finish as many of these practice proofs as they could, front and back. So that would be extremely beneficial for you to practice. I will post a key on Google Classroom as well. Do the proof before you look at the key, and so you can see if you're getting them or not. The other thing that we did in stations was work through side, side, side in the coordinate plane, which is our friend, the distance formula. So for this one, you would figure out the distance between PQ and QR and PR, and do that for XY and YZ and XZ, and then you would determine, are the triangles congruent or not? Well, for them to be congruent, you need to have these distances the same. So you're just going to use your points, put it into the distance formula, and then see if those two sides have the same distance for all three of them. If they do, the triangles are congruent. For this one, I did not give them a copy of this, so they just did this work on their own paper and used this as a reference. I'll post this on Google Classroom. The other thing that they did in the stations was look at this triangle congruency. Again, I didn't give them a copy of it. They just used it as a reference and did it on their own paper. So what you would do here is you would look and state whether the triangles could be proven congruent, if possible, by side, 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 or side, angle, side. So here I would say side, angle, side, and side, angle, side. So these can be proved congruent by side, angle, side. And then you have to write the correct congruency statement. So I have to get the order of my triangle correct. So I've got TQY is congruent to triangle PCK. And I can see here that if I look at QY, that's congruent to CK. They both have one congruent marking. And I've got my Y is in the same place as the K, and then you can look at the KP, my ends, and my TY, my ends there. So again, I'll post a key to this one. This is a really great activity to work through as well. And then some of them may not be able to be proven by those two. Your homework then is homework 5. It's just one sheet, front and back, and we have got a little bit of everything that we practiced in class today. So you're going to want to finish the homework, just do the best you can on the proofs, and then in class we'll correct them. And remember, you also have a quiz next class. So for that quiz, you're just covering section 1, 2, and 3 of this unit. So it doesn't include anything on side angle side or side 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 or anything on section 4, which was triangle congruence. So just sections 4.1 to 4.3. Okay, so that wraps it up. That was what we did in class today. It was a busy day.